There's a kind of wealth that isn't measured in money, a kind of success that doesn't scream on social media or glitter in accolades. It's quieter, deeper, unshakably powerful. And if you learn how to build it, you'll never walk alone again. It's called relationship, and it's the real currency of a meaningful life. Because at the end of every hustle, every goal, every late-night grind session, there's a single question that haunts the heart. Who's there with me? Who truly knows me, sees me, strengthens me? Not the crowd, not the followers, but the few, the rare, the real. Most people are starving for connection, drowning in contacts but thirsty for connection, surrounded by noise but aching for someone who actually listens. And the tragedy isn't that deep relationships are rare. The tragedy is that most people never learn how to build them. You can have talent, wealth, influence, but if you don't know how to nurture relationships, you will always feel bankrupt where it matters most. Success without love is hollow. Growth without connection is unsustainable. A life without real people in it is a slow, silent death dressed up as achievement. So here's the truth. Building lasting relationships is not a mystery. It's not magic. It's a discipline. It's a blueprint. And it begins with mindset. Mindset determines your approach to people. If you see people as tools, you'll use them. If you see them as threats, you'll avoid them. If you see them as competition, you'll resent them. But when you see them as mirrors, reflections of you, extensions of your growth, you approach them with reverence, with responsibility, with openness. You begin to shift from transactional to transformational. From what can I get from this person to who can I become through this connection? That shift changes everything. Because when your motive is pure, your presence becomes powerful. But presence doesn't happen by accident. It requires belief. You must believe that relationships are worth the work, that showing up for someone else is not a detour from your success, it's a direct path to it. That vulnerability is not weakness, it's access. That listening is not passive. It's the most powerful thing you can do in a world that never shuts up. Believe this. People remember how you made them feel more than what you said. They remember if you were present, if you listened, if you made space for their truth without needing to fix them or prove something. And that kind of presence, that kind of intentional, soul-level presence is what builds bridges no storm can destroy. Clarity follows. Clarity in who you are, clarity in what you value, clarity in what kind of relationships you're building and why. You cannot build a house without a blueprint, and you cannot build lasting relationships without knowing your foundation. What are your non-negotiables? What are your values? What kind of energy do you want in your circle, and what kind do you need to release? If you don't clarify that, you'll tolerate anything. You'll confuse history with alignment. You'll stay in draining relationships out of guilt or fear. But clarity sets the standard. Clarity protects your time, your heart, your energy. Because not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone qualifies for a front row seat in your life. And that's not arrogance, it's stewardship. You are responsible for the energy you allow around you. You are responsible for the soil you plant your roots in. And once you have clarity, you cast vision. Not just for your business, not just for your goals, but for your relationships. What do you want them to look like? What kind of friend, partner, mentor, leader do you want to become? Don't drift design. Vision breathes intention into every interaction. Vision gives you a reason to be consistent, to be patient, to be generous, even when it's not reciprocated. Because you're not loving people based on how they treat you. You're loving them based on who you've chosen to become. Purpose fuels it all. Purpose in relationships is what separates the fleeting from the forever. When you know why someone is in your life and why you are in theirs, you stop playing games. You stop pretending. You start showing up fully and calling others higher. You begin to understand. Relationships are not convenience stores. They are commitments. They are sacred spaces where growth is mirrored, pain is shared, and dreams are protected. And that kind of purpose demands discipline. Discipline to call when you don't feel like it. Discipline to forgive when it's hard. Discipline to hold boundaries with love, not resentment. Discipline to keep choosing someone day after day, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. You water what you want to grow. And relationships, like gardens, don't bloom without attention, without sacrifice. without pruning what doesn't serve the health of the whole. And as you move from discipline to action, remember little things build big connections. The text that says, I'm thinking of you. The moment you look someone in the eye and say, I hear you. The willingness to be wrong. The courage to say, I'm sorry. The boldness to ask, how can I love you better? These are the bricks. This is the cement. The daily, invisible acts of presence and persistence that stack over time into something sacred. And as you build, let gratitude guide you. Be grateful for the people who stayed, for the ones who challenged you, for the ones who didn't leave when it got messy. Gratitude turns relationships into sanctuaries. It softens judgment. It magnifies the good. It makes space for the flaws without losing sight of the gift. Even in conflict, especially in conflict, gratitude keeps the door open. It reminds you, this person is not my enemy. This problem is not the relationship. This moment does not define us. Adaptability becomes your superpower. Because no relationship stays the same forever. People grow. Circumstances change. And if you're not willing to grow with it, you'll lose what could have lasted. The key is to evolve without detaching, to pivot without losing purpose, to give space without creating distance. That requires humility, flexibility, faith. The understanding that change isn't always a sign something's wrong. Sometimes it's a sign something is deepening. And resilience, that's the heartbeat. Lasting relationships aren't built by perfect people. They're built by present people. Forgiving people. People who are more committed to repair than being right. Who can disagree without disconnecting. Who can go through the storm without jumping ship. Resilience says, I'm not leaving just because it's hard. I'm staying because it matters. That kind of resolve, that kind of loyalty, that is rare. And when you become that person, you don't just build relationships. You become the relationship others never want to lose. Because love is not just a feeling, it's a force. And when you choose to love, to show up, to grow together, you create something no fame, no money, no success could ever replicate. You build legacy, one conversation, one moment, one act of love at a time. And legacy is not built in grand gestures, it's carved into the everyday, into the way you remember someone's name when no one else does. The way you sit with silence instead of rushing to fix. The way you stand by someone, not just in their highlight reel, but in the raw, behind-the-scenes chapters of their life. That's where real relationships are born. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not in the noise, but in the noticing. Because the people who change your life don't always make headlines, but they always make you better. And when you become one of those people, when you choose to be that steady, that intentional, that loving, you become unforgettable. Not because you performed, but because you were present. Not because you impressed, but because you invested. Not because you shined alone, but because you made someone else shine brighter. This is the blueprint. Not for shallow connection, but for soul-deep relationships. Relationships that don't break under pressure. That don't vanish at the first disagreement. That don't rely on perfection to persevere. But relationships built on trust, truth, time. You give what you want to receive. You initiate what you wish existed. You show up as the friend, the partner, the leader that you wish someone had been for you. Because when you do, something sacred happens. You attract what you are. You start drawing in people with the same values, the same fire, the same vision. You no longer chase, you align. And in that alignment, relationships flourish. There is no shortcut to this, no cheat code, no three-step hack. It's deeper than that. It's a lifestyle, a way of being, a conscious daily choice to honor people, to see them, to fight for them, to build with them. And in doing so, you heal, you grow. You discover parts of yourself that only bloom in the presence of connection. You begin to realize that life isn't meant to be a solo climb to the top, but a shared journey, a chorus of voices, a circle of strength, a collective evolution. So don't just succeed alone, build together. Don't just rise fast, rise deep. Don't just network, nurture. Because when everything else fades and the lights go out and the applause stops, it won't be your resume they remember. It'll be your relationships. It'll be who felt seen by you, who became better because of you, who grew under your love, your leadership, your loyalty. That is the mark of a life well lived. That is your blueprint. Now build Build not just for the moment, but for the legacy. Not just for what looks good, but for what feels right in the soul. Build the kind of relationships that echo long after the conversation ends, long after the moment passes, long after you've walked out of the room. Because in a world obsessed with impressions, choose to make impact. In a world chasing reach, choose to create roots. And here's the final truth, the one that will separate you from the masses forever. Lasting relationships are not found. They are forged. Forged in fire, in friction, in forgiveness. They are not stumbled upon. They are sustained through sacrifice. And you are the architect, the builder, the creator of the life you will one day look back on and say, I didn't just climb. I didn't just achieve. I connected. I built something eternal. So be the one who remembers. Be the one who apologizes first, who shows up when it's inconvenient, who holds space when others are silent. Be the one who protects trust like treasure, who speaks life when others gossip, who leaves people better than they were before you met them. Because that energy, that kind of spirit, it doesn't disappear. It echoes through generations, through memories, through every life it touches. And when you live like that, when you love like that, your relationships become unshakable. Not perfect, but permanent. Not easy, but eternal. You stop needing guarantees because you've become the guarantee. You stop needing everyone to stay because the ones meant to will feel the gravity of your presence. And you stop asking, where are the real ones? Because you are one. That is the blueprint. That is the way. Now go and build the kind of love, loyalty, and legacy that cannot be broken, ever. And as you build, let your life speak. Let it speak of loyalty in a world of convenience. Let it speak of consistency in a culture of flakiness. Let it speak of depth in an age obsessed with surface. You will be tempted to give less, to protect yourself, to expect nothing and invest even less. Because yes, people will disappoint. They will forget. They will walk away. They will betray. But don't let broken people turn you into someone you're not. Don't let their fear teach you to withhold your heart. Don't let their absence become your new standard. You are not here to survive connection. You are here to thrive in it. You are here to love radically, relentlessly, intentionally. You are here to show the world that real relationship still exists, that it's not extinct, just rare. Rare like gold, rare like truth, rare like you. So live rare. Stand out by standing steady. Build the circle that speaks life, the table where everyone is safe, the bond that cannot be bought, only built through time, trust, and truth. That's your role now. The example, the blueprint, the living, breathing reminder that you can build something beautiful, something lasting, something sacred, one relationship at a time. No shortcuts, no gimmicks, just truth, loyalty, patience, love. That's how you change your life. That's how you change the world. So start today. Speak life, show up, be present, and build what will never break. Because when the dust settles and the noise dies down, all that will matter is who you built with, who you fought for, who you held space for, and who did the same for you. Legacy isn't about how many people know your name. It's about how many lives were changed because you were in them. It's about who you made better by your love, your truth, your presence. So take inventory. Look around. Who are you building with? Who are you becoming in your relationships? Not just in the good moments, but in the moments when it's inconvenient, when it's hard, when it costs you. Because that is where the real relationship begins. When it costs, when it stretches you, when it confronts the parts of you that still need growth, but you stay, you grow, you show up anyway. And in that showing up, something sacred forms. A bond that won't bend under pressure, a connection that doesn't fade with time, a love that isn't based on perfect conditions, but on presence, on choice, on truth. So be bold in love. Be fierce in friendship. Be clear in your standards. Be patient in your building. Be generous in your spirit. Be faithful in your follow-through. And most of all, be grateful. Grateful for the people who've walked with you. Grateful for the ones who challenged you. Grateful for the ones who stayed. And grateful for the opportunity every single day to become the kind of person who builds what lasts. Because that's what this life is about. Not just what you achieve, but who you become through what you build together. Now go. not to impress, but to invest, not to collect connections, but to create covenant, not to be remembered, but to remember what truly matters. This is your blueprint. Now build. You can't plant weeds and expect roses. You can't entertain doubt, fear, and laziness in your mind every day and then cry foul when your life doesn't bloom. The mind is soil. It accepts whatever seeds you feed it: words, habits, beliefs, and whether you choose intentionally or passively, it will grow what you've sown. Train your mind for failure, and it will obey. Train it for success, and it will build you a life that matches your highest potential. But make no mistake, training is not an event. It's a discipline. It's not something you do once. It's something you become. Success begins not in your hands, but in your head. You've been told success is about hustle, about effort, about grinding every hour until the wheels fall off. But if the mind is unfocused, undisciplined, and filled with contradiction, no amount of action will save you. You don't get rich by working harder while thinking small. You don't change your life by moving fast with a broken compass. Direction beats speed. Precision beats panic. And that clarity, that mental structure, only comes to those who take full responsibility for how they think. Most people don't fail from lack of effort. They fail from lack of alignment, from a divided self. They talk abundance, but live in scarcity. They dream big, but think small. They desire freedom, but cling to the comfort of the familiar. And so the war begins not outside, but inside. A mind trained to sabotage. A mind conditioned to settle. A mind filled with the echoes of voices that said you can't, long before you ever dared to believe you could. And if you do not confront those voices, if you do not challenge them, uproot them, replace them, they will run your life on autopilot. You were not born with those limitations. You were taught them. You absorbed them. You inherited them from a culture that profits off your confusion. And now you must unlearn. You must choose differently, think differently, speak differently. Because every thought is a command. Every belief is an architect. Every word is a brick in the house of your identity. And if you don't take control of that house, you'll spend your life living in a mansion built by fear. Training your mind begins with attention. What you focus on, you empower. What you obsess over, you invite. Your focus is your vote, and most people are voting for chaos without even realizing it. Scrolling endlessly, comparing constantly, worrying chronically, feeding themselves garbage information, and wondering why they feel numb. A trained mind guards the gate. A trained mind filters. A trained mind doesn't let anything in that would poison the roots of who they're becoming. You want to change your life? Start by changing what you give your mind to every morning. Don't just roll out of bed and fall into the world's noise. Set the tone. Write your intention. Read something that aligns your spirit. Repeat the truths you want to live by. Prime your emotional state like an athlete warming up before a championship match, because every day is a championship match. Against doubt, against distraction, against the habits of the old you that want you to stay the same. Repetition rewires. Most people repeat problems. The few who rise repeat principles. You must reprogram the pattern. Interrupt the cycle. Override the voice that says, I'm not ready, with one that says, I'm preparing. Replace I don't know how with I'll figure it out. Substitute I'm not that kind of person with I'm becoming someone new. You cannot wait for your mind to feel like believing. You must lead it, command it, teach it what matters by what you do. Because training the mind is not wishful thinking. It's radical ownership. It's knowing that the world owes you nothing, but your mind owes you everything. That if you don't build discipline, the world will feed you distraction. If you don't build inner wealth, you'll be enslaved to external validation. If you don't build confidence from within, you'll chase applause until your soul is hollow. The strongest people you know, the ones who seem unbothered, unmoved, relentless, they trained for that. They didn't wake up lucky. They woke up on purpose. They chose what to think. They designed what to believe. They didn't let fear set the terms. They built their reality in silence, while others were entertaining their limitations. And you can too. You train your body with reps. You train your mind with standards. You decide what is and what is no longer acceptable. You enforce a new threshold. You set boundaries around your attention, your energy, your time. You say no to the old way of thinking, not out of force, but out of devotion. devotion to the person you were meant to be. The person who doesn't panic in uncertainty. The person who doesn't flinch at rejection. The person who doesn't crumble when life doesn't cooperate. That person is already in you. They're just waiting for you to step out of your own way. And when you do, something clicks. You stop asking for motivation and start generating it. You stop looking for answers and start creating solutions. You stop replaying the past and start designing the future. Because a trained mind doesn't react to life. It directs it. It doesn't blame the conditions. It builds new ones. It doesn't dwell in limitation. It leverages it. This is how the shift happens. Not with hype, not with wishful thinking, but with discipline, with devotion, with repetition. You wake up again and again and remind yourself, I don't train for comfort. I train for capacity. Because the life you want will demand more from you, and you'll be ready. Because the life you want will demand more from you, and you'll be ready. Ready not because everything feels easy, but because you've trained yourself to act even when it doesn't. Ready because you've stopped negotiating with your lesser self. Ready because your vision no longer fades in the face of resistance. You've become the kind of person who is no longer shocked by adversity. You expect it. You don't collapse at the first sign of friction. You tighten your focus. That's what training does. It prepares you for pressure. It equips you for impact. It makes you solid when others are shaking. You've got to stop hoping for life to get easier. Stop wishing the storm would pass. You weren't designed to dodge the storm. You were designed to walk through it with fire in your eyes. That's how strength is built. That's how character is chiseled. The wind doesn't blow to destroy you. It blows to sculpt you, to strip away everything that doesn't serve the mission. And a trained mind doesn't resent that. A trained mind welcomes it because the obstacles reveal the untrained parts of you, the parts that flinch, the parts that doubt, the parts that revert to blame when things don't go as planned. That's the battlefield, not the outside world, but the inner world. And until you master that, no success will satisfy you. Because your environment will change, your income will grow, your followers might increase. But if your mind is undisciplined, you'll still sabotage it all. You'll still find a way to lose what you built. Because you didn't become the kind of person who can sustain it. You don't get rich by accident. You don't become healthy by luck. You don't build a powerful life by default. You train for it. You build it with intention. And every thought matters. Every emotion is a signal. Every reaction is a teacher. But most people ignore those signals. They react without review. They live on impulse. They justify bad patterns with clever stories. That's just the way I am. I've always been like this. I'm not that kind of person. Lies. All of them. Lies that protect the ego. Lies that let you off the hook. But you're done with lies. You're done with pretending that greatness is out of reach. You're done with talking like a victim when you were born to be a creator. You're done with borrowing limitations from people who gave up on themselves a long time ago. You're not here to fit in. You're here to break cycles. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be legendary. And legendary people don't think like the crowd. They think like builders, like architects, like warriors. Train your mind to recognize fear and move anyway. Train your mind to see failure and still take the risk. Train your mind to hear doubt and replace it with certainty. Not because you're always confident, but because you've decided that fear doesn't lead anymore. You do. With clarity, with action, with principles. Because once your principles are strong, your emotions stop running the show. You don't lash out every time things go wrong. You don't collapse every time someone disappoints you. You stop reacting to people who haven't earned access to your attention. That's what training gives you: emotional leverage. You don't waste it, you invest it. And your energy becomes a force field, focused, untouchable, relentless. And that's what scares people: not your talent, but your clarity. Not your success, but your self-mastery. Because most people are running from themselves. But you've decided to turn inward and build a mind that works for you, not against you. It's time you stop chasing motivation and start honoring your rituals. The daily disciplines that shape your character when no one's watching. The small commitments you keep. The promises you no longer break. Motivation is a spark, but ritual is the fireplace. It's where the heat stays. It's where the power builds. And if you want long-term success, you'd better fall in love with what's repetitive, not what's just inspiring. Anyone can be great for a moment, But very few choose greatness every morning. Before the noise, before the world distracts them, before the doubt creeps in, they decide. Again and again and again. That's how success happens, not by doing one big thing once, but by doing one small thing 1,000 times with precision. So what are you repeating? What are you practicing? Because whether you know it or not, you are always training. You're either training for focus or distraction, courage or cowardice, action or avoidance, confidence or self-sabotage. And you train based on what you tolerate, what you allow to stay in your mind, your habits, your environment. That is the curriculum. And if you want to change your life, you don't need a new year. You don't need a new job. You need a new standard, a new agreement with yourself, where the old rules no longer apply, where the former excuses no longer qualify, where you don't just talk about change, you embody it. A trained mind knows the difference between wanting and committing, between being interested and being obsessed, between being inspired and being disciplined. And once you see that, really see it, you can never go back. You can never unsee the cost of complacency. You can never pretend you didn't know that your thoughts shape your destiny. You'll start guarding your energy like your life depends on it, because it does. You'll start walking away from drama because it dilutes your drive. You'll stop tolerating relationships that drain you because they kill your clarity. You'll get sharper, cleaner, more precise. You'll start moving with power, not because everything is perfect, but because you are finally in command. And that's when it happens. You begin to notice the shift, not in the world, but in you. You're calmer, but sharper, quieter, but more commanding, less reactive, but more dangerous, because you've trained your mind to obey your purpose, not your emotions. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You just execute, day by day, moment by moment, because a trained mind no longer lives by moods. It lives by mission. That's how the greats move. They're not superhuman. They're just structured. They've built a mental environment that doesn't allow chaos to take root. They've made a habit of clarity. They don't get seduced by noise. They don't get drunk on distraction. They have mastered the art of ignoring what doesn't matter because they've already decided what does. That's the level you're building toward, the place where your mind becomes your greatest asset, not your constant enemy. Where every thought serves the vision, where every belief builds the future, where every day you train like it counts, because it does. Most people think success is some mysterious thing that happens when all the stars align. But you're not most people. You've seen the truth. Success is structure. Success is philosophy. Success is discipline applied thought over time. And the reason most never achieve it is not because they're lazy, it's because their mind is undisciplined. Their mind has no anchor, no filter, no order. They're building castles on sand and wondering why everything keeps collapsing. You must build different. You must think different. You must rise each morning with a question on your lips. What am I becoming today? Not what am I doing? Not what am I getting? But who am I becoming? Because that is the foundation. That is the power source. That is the one variable you can fully control and the one that determines everything else. And when you train your mind to think like this, to constantly check in with who you're becoming, you stop wasting time. You stop arguing with small thinkers. You stop trying to win temporary battles and start investing in permanent victories. You stop comparing and start compounding. Compounding wisdom, compounding self-respect, compounding integrity. Because a trained mind knows the difference between movement and meaning. It doesn't chase trends. It builds legacy. It doesn't talk about goals. It lives by principles. It doesn't need constant motivation because identity has taken over. And when your identity is forged in clarity, your habits align automatically. Your language changes. Your decisions sharpen. Your distractions lose their grip. But it's not magic. It's not sudden. It's not glamorous. It's daily. It's lonely. It's relentless. And it's worth it. Because while the untrained mind lives in reaction, the trained mind lives in creation. You become a creator, not just of content or projects or income, but of atmosphere, of mindset, of energy. You walk into rooms and shift the frequency, not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. And clarity is rare. That's why it commands attention. That's why it magnetizes opportunity. That's why people begin to say, there's something different about you. Yes, there is. You've trained your mind to think in alignment with your values. You've trained your emotions to respond to truth, not triggers. You've trained your standards to filter what belongs and what no longer fits. You're not addicted to progress. You're devoted to mastery. And mastery demands order. Order in your thoughts, order in your habits, order in your environment. Because when your life is filled with disorder, it's a reflection of a disordered mind. And success cannot live in disorder. Wealth doesn't thrive in chaos. Confidence doesn't grow in confusion. You must become ruthless with what you allow, not because you're cold, but because you're clear. You've paid too high a price to get here. You've suffered enough at the hands of uncertainty. Now, you build with precision. So you cut the noise. You tighten the circle. You simplify the plan. You eliminate the gray areas. Everything is either in alignment or in the way. That's the level you train for. And yes, it will be misunderstood. Yes, it will be lonely. Yes, it will cost you access to people who once felt like home, but you've outgrown survival. Now you're building something permanent, and the mind must lead because the body will follow. The money will follow. The reputation will follow. The results will follow. But it all starts in here, in the mind you train every day like your life depends on it, because it does. You've come too far to turn back now. You've seen too much truth to keep pretending. You've tasted what discipline can do, what clarity can awaken, what alignment can build. And now, there's no going back to the noise, the doubt, the chaos that once controlled you. You don't belong in that place anymore. You don't fit in with confusion. You don't fit in with compromise. You don't fit in with the old stories that made you small, polite, apologetic for your greatness. That chapter is closed. And from this moment forward, your life becomes a declaration, not a question mark. You walk like someone who has trained their mind to obey vision, not emotion. You speak like someone who has mastered the silence before the noise. You move like someone who knows exactly where they're going and refuses to be delayed by anything less. You don't explain your growth to people committed to staying stuck. You don't slow down to be understood by minds not trained to comprehend your frequency. You're not for everyone because you were never meant to be. You're for those building, those rising, those choosing purpose over popularity. And from this moment on, you are no longer someone with potential. You are power in motion. You are the result of daily war with weakness, with distraction, with the lazy thoughts that used to run your life. And you won, quietly, relentlessly, without applause, but with conviction. You built a mind that bends reality, that moves mountains, that turns silence into strategy and pain into power. You no longer fear resistance because resistance trained you. You no longer beg for validation because identity grounds you. You no longer wait for timing because you are the timing. And now, the world will adjust. Because a person with a trained mind doesn't chase what is, they create what must be. And you, yes, you are now the architect of a life so rooted in discipline, so structured in truth, so committed to vision that nothing outside of you has power over what's inside of you. This is no longer a goal, this is who you are. So walk like it, speak like it, build like it, live like it. Because you have trained your mind for success, and now there's nothing you cannot do.